Hi, my name is Courtney Fider, and I am here today with David Firth and Paul O'Byrne. We are all colleagues, and today we are speaking to each other just about our work. And if you've received this from us, probably you've worked with one of us in the past. So we just wanted to speak a little bit about what we do and what we're seeing happen in our work and with our clients and just what's going on in the world today. So David, tell us a little bit about your work and why a client might be calling you to do something with them today.
Cool, thanks, Courtney. Yeah, so the primary thing that my clients know me for is I do a lot of work in communication and storytelling.
Yeah.
And my sort of hidden agenda is to try and pull that away from what we traditionally think of in those worlds as, presentations and pictures and persuading each other and this, that, the other, and trying to get to the idea that, we're always communicating and being communicated with, and it's like the force that drives everything that we are doing. And so I have a definition of communication, which is about communication is, I believe, how human beings create the future. And storytelling is the process by which we create shared worlds that we want to create the future in, so bringing people together, alignment, and that sort of thing. So that's what they call me for. Yeah.
I love that. I think you once said something like people protect what they create together too. And I loved that.
Yeah, so the other thing in the communication thing is the whole idea that storytelling is an interesting thing that we could do together, but story
Mhm.
creating, story authoring, being at the source of what we want to create in the world, that's exactly it. And yes, you're absolutely right. I believe that once people have authored their own, vision for the future, they're more likely to protect it rather than be enrolled in somebody else's vision, you know.
Right, right. And I
Happens,
think we all
happens a
noticed.
lot in the world.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Well, and I think we all noticed there was this thing that happened where we had to spend time apart, and this authenticity when we're together is just so very different.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah, it's a precious thing to be together, and we missed it for a while.
We
Yeah.
did, we did. And so I think that precious time and being together and pulling those threads and feeling that energy of being together and then having a reason to do that and a conclusion or a purpose that comes from that and that thread of communication that you help them weave is quite beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Paul, what about you? Why do people call you?
So, just a little bit about my background, just to understand why people call me. So, my background was as a HR leader, and I spent 25 years at Microsoft, and I had the opportunity to build organizations from in Ireland to India to the UK, China, and the US. So, I get called when companies are thinking about like growing, transforming, changing, and they want to look at, their manager and leadership capability in order to make those changes and transformation. So at an individual level, you could have a leader who's scaling up to a new role, taking on bigger responsibilities. But you could also have at a company level where you're looking at, okay, what is the level of leadership and management we need to go from where we are today to where we need to go tomorrow. And so when they understand there's a gap in those areas, and sometimes they understand it quite late because it's more reactive, but some organizations have the luxury to do it proactively. And then that allows them to look at building out, the leadership and management capabilities that's allowing them to scale. And that would be the reasons why people would call us.
Courtney, what about you?
Yeah, people will usually call me because they kind of need an ER for team building. Usually it's a senior leader calling, or sometimes HR or learning and development because there's a team who's in need. Maybe it's because a team is coming together to be new together, or a team needs some integration from a merger or an acquisition, but there's some kind of cultural shift or change where some kind of integration needs to happen, and they are struggling with the ability to do that together in a natural or organic way and to pull them out of that, I guess, technical aspect that they know they have to do together and make them come to 60,000 feet and look at it from a behavioral perspective just isn't a fair request, right? They really do need some assistance to do that well and do that together. And so that's where I can come in and help them with that on an immersive level. And usually we can do things really, really quickly to help them and get them on the right track in a fast way and a transformational way, helping the individual leader and and the team come together really, really well and quickly and, really to see the change happen in a way that might take them years if they tried to do it by themselves. And sometimes we can help them see too that, what their technical expertise is what they learned along the way, but this leadership is something that they really have to be taught in order to integrate that with their work. And so that makes them feel a little bit better. So that helps. I imagine you guys see that in your work too. I'm sure that you see that in communications, David and Paul. I'm sure you see that in the leadership top to bottom in the organization. Paul, how do you see that when from sort of foundational leadership up to the top? Do you notice that there's this kind of like evolution of leadership that is consistent from, I guess, foundational leaders all the way through top level leaders? How do you see that thread?
Yeah, I mean, like having built organizations from scratch and sort of seeing how they grow and develop over time, usually it comes to sort of a stage of complexity where you need to have what I would call sort of more professional management. And we have the sort of the saying that a promotion to a manager is not a promotion, it's a career change. And organizations that understand that it requires a whole new capabilities and a whole mindset. And that's a big transition for an individual who's going from sort of a peer to a manager role and how to actually navigate that. And it requires a whole new set of skills. And, we've worked with a lot of technical organizations, and that can be a real challenge in letting go of what they do well to learn to do something that they need to do better in that particular role. And then you get to the next level of leadership where, the organization is getting more complex, and you'll find there's a gap between what we would call, either the founder leadership or the senior leadership, and that next level that's needed to help scale the organization. And that's where they kind of have to look at, okay, building out leaders who can deal with that level of complexity, who can manage more up, down, and across than just manage their individual teams. And then some of the senior levels, even senior levels who come into new organizations, like at the executive level or even a new CEO, they need support in terms of how do they play in those particular roles. Because they not now alone have to manage up, down, and across, but they also have to manage externally. So it's another level of complexity. So, as organization scales, the level of complexity increases across the different layers. And being able to understand that and those inflection points, I think, can really help an organization proactively prepare to create that future that David talks about that they need to create together.
Yeah, and Paul, it seems like those changes are happening really quickly these days. Would you agree?
Very, very quickly. And the complexity is going up.
Yeah.
In terms of dealing with, major technological geopolitical shifts in the world, and helping organizations and individuals deal with that,
Right. We can have a whole series on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the post pandemic thing, especially at the first line manager level,
Yeah, but and so that is happening. That need to lead the complexity is one big thing that we've isolated in our work that connects us all together. The other came out of our previous conversations with that coincides with the time when people are feeling a lot overwhelmed, exhausted, tired. So it's not like they're in tip-top condition for, there's another level of global complexity coming on down the line here. It's like, so how can we help our clients, slow down to deal with that?
Right.
And take some of that precious time, which I call it the ratty voice. The ratty voice says, don't take any time because you're busy, How can we encourage them that there is a way of using time really well to anticipate some of these changes and be proactive, as you said, Paul, in leading them? Yeah.
Absolutely. And David, one of the best things I've ever heard you say was that people protect what they create together idea, and that you pointed out that idea, or not the idea, the reality that we faced where we really had to be apart for a period of time, and that coming back together is such a luxury now that we have again, but also that busyness we're facing again, and the complexity Paul's pointing out, that combination of things is increasing that monkey mind, and there's so much chaos churning that people, I think, are getting to this place of like, I can't add an offsite, and I can't add in-person training, and I can't ask for Paul or Courtney or David's, line item in my budget because, there's so much of that chatter. I think
Yeah.
slowing down is such it's such a big hurdle for so many people that we're talking to, because it feels like there's no place where they can slow down enough to even, contemplate the idea of some of these pieces of work. And yet slowing down enough to look at some of these things will inevitably create an enormous amount of space in most cases. That kind of slow down to go fast thing that I think a lot of us are often talking about
Yes.
is actually really real. It's one of those things that we can't get to the bottom of until it's actually practically seen, right? So it's
Yes.
really hard to convince and persuade, because it's one of those proof in the pudding kind of things where you really can't show it until you can show it on the other side. But I think that's something we talk about a lot.
I wish I was smart enough to have a really great word which communicates that challenge, which is if I invest more time here, I will save more time there. If I invest more focused energy here, I will save wasted energy down there. And it's like everybody understands that that's a thing.
Yeah.
David, I
Pull
used to talk
towards,
about
yeah,
that when, we're driving organizational change or working, and,
yeah,
it's kind of pay now or pay later. With
Yeah.
sometimes
but you
Yeah.
will pay.
The bill will come. Yeah, the
yeah,
bill will come.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one
Yeah.
other aspect I think that's really important is the human aspect in all of this is really critical. And
Yeah.
so leaders and managers being able to help people go through all of these changes. And when you have major tectonic changes like we're going through now, leadership is really critical, but they have to embrace it themselves. So they have to go through the journey first. It's like they have to put on their own mask before they put on others,
Yeah.
And so helping them transition through those changes is really important.
Yeah, it's funny, Paul, when I talk to my kids sometimes about what I do for work, my older daughter will often say, that sounds like kindergarten, mom. That sounds like kindergarten, mom. And often I'll say, you're not wrong, honey. But I think the point she's making, which is very well taken, is, it's that continuous point, which I think we're always learning too, is that, you have to take individual responsibility before you can take responsibility for others. But
Yes.
it's really tough thing to do as an individual leader, to sort of lower that I can do it, I can push through and
Yeah.
be vulnerable and walk into something really hard and show a group of people that something is really hard and let them help you with their expertise and walk into something together. Well, I would challenge you, David, as our communications expert here, to come up with that word and then write a book
That's
about
right.
it, because you'll probably make billions of dollars and you can share it with all of us. Let's go. Let's do
And on
that.
the word and then the marketing department.
Yeah,
and then
we'll
the,
create a seminar about it, and we'll share it with all these wonderful people that are listening to us today. And then that's all she wrote.
No problem.
So I guess to bring this kind of full circle, let's kind of come back to our clients are probably wondering, like, what would they do with this? So David, what would you say you would stop, start, and continue as a result of this conversation, or what would you offer to the clients as a stop, a start, and a continue?
Yeah, so I'm here at the moment actually helping with an offsite, and so that my mind immediately goes to, if a client is brave enough to say, no, we need some time, some precious time together to think so that we can create the future. My stop would be stop focusing on filling the agenda full of things to be talked about. Start with the end in mind. What's the future we want to create together with this workshop as an input? And only then, what are the pieces of content and information we need in order to create that future, because otherwise you run out of time talking about all the stuff and you haven't actually created anything yet. You just understood something a bit more, and that's not enough. The start would be about just what we've been talking about, actually. There isn't a client we have who isn't already being rewarded for how well they use the organization's money. I would ask people to start thinking about, how do I use the organization's time? How do I use my time intentionally and well in order to do that leadership thing that I'm supposed to do? And then very, very quickly, the continue would be, when I came into the business world, presence was all about presence and having the control of the front of the room and looking good and sounding good and whatever. Presence now, I think, just means increasingly in this busy, complex world, being present for each other, being here and listening to people and helping them wherever they are. What about you, Paul? What's your
Yeah, I
step?
mean, I think one first stop, I think, would be kind of believing you're alone in this.
Yeah.
Part of this is just, the the journey that you go through either as an individual leader or the journey that organizations go through as they go through these different transformations. I would say start being curious, you know.
Mm.
You said sort of start slowing down and stuff like that,
Mm.
but start being curious and sort of take a step back and sort of say, okay, where am I today and where do I need to go? And start thinking. But you can only do that if you get off the treadmill and you kind of take a different perspective and slow down. And I think continue being the best as you can, but also understand what are the things that might be getting in your way of being your best. And you don't have to have all the right answers. You need to know how to get to the right answers. And there's plenty of ways that people can support you in that, including your team who can help you create it, including external people who can bring in some perspective because they have gone through this with other organizations.
Definitely.
What about you, Courtney?
I would say stop. I'm kind of going back to that senior leader thing that I was touching on. I would say stop feeling like you have to be perfect and the best. If you're a leader, definitely be vulnerable, show your softer side, let yourself, you're not going to know how to do all the things. So let somebody else lead in an area of expertise and be the subject matter expert and show your weak side and let that be okay on your team. I'd say start trusting your team to be experts and start investing in them, both monetarily for training and also, your emotion and your time as a leader. And I'd say continue sharing with your organization what you're doing to mentor your team and lead your team and grow your team and let your organization benefit from the leadership that you're sharing with your team. And, show the organization how that's working so that hopefully the organization can also benefit from that. I think often a leader will keep that and kind of hoard it a little bit. Like I'm doing a great job with my team. And I think that sometimes a whole organization can benefit a lot more from that. So yeah, that would be mine. So I think this has been a really good conversation. I think this is a first conversation. Our intention is to keep sharing these conversations with our clients. And I think the whole reason we came up with this is because we thought, hey, together we have more to share than each of us has to share with our clients individually. And so that was the beginning point. And as we wrap this up, I think we'd invite you to reflect on one key takeaway from what we've brought up here and try to think about one thing you would consider actioning from this conversation. What's one actionable step you'd take from what we talked about today? And how would you apply that, I guess, in your leadership or with your team or your organization? And then tell us about that. Like, whichever of us sent this to you, talk back to us. Tell us what you actioned and what you would take forward from this, and also what you'd like to hear about in the future. What did I guess what resonated, but is there something you need more from us and would like to hear, I guess, a conversation about? And please tell us more, and we will try to come up with another little video about that. So we'd like to keep the conversation going, and we'd like to hear from you, and we hope you got something from this today. And thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to being in touch in the future.